In this video, we're going to turn this into this. Woo! What's up, guys? It's Asher Postman, and holy crap, I have almost 150,000 subscribers. How did that even happen? It was probably from the Walmart yodeling kid. Nah, probably not.
The best EDM song that's ever been made.
No, it was definitely not from Jake Paul. I can get my subscribers without him. Anyway, if you haven't subscribed yet, dude, subscribe. It's not that hard. We have a pretty fun time on this channel, you know? Make some weird parody remixes, learn how to mix and master, stuff like that. Give it a shot, subscribe. Speaking of mixing, that's what we're gonna learn how to do today. I've been getting so many requests to do this, and finally it's happening. I'm gonna show you guys how to mix a song like I do it, and hopefully you'll learn something dope. So yeah, let's get right into it. Alright guys, here's the project file for my brand new single, Going to the Sun. If you haven't heard it yet, go check it out on Spotify or any other streaming platform. Link is in the description. Go give it some love. If you've already heard it, then you'll probably be pretty excited to see this project. Although, as you can see, there's only a little section of it. It's just a drop. But I'm going to show you guys how I mix and how I mix this song in particular. So I turned off all the effects and put all the volumes to their default level pretty much. And this is what it sounds like without any mixing. Yeah, I mean, it's cool, but it doesn't sound professional at all. And so you may be hearing this and thinking, wow, this actually kind of sounds like some of my own music. Well, then chances are you need to learn mixing. So this is what I'm going to cover in this video. First of all, I'm going to show you what the individual layers sound like. So there's a kick and a crash, and then a snare, hi-hats, reverse snare, vocal chop, sub bass, synth bass, synth stabs, drop lead, and the drop synths. So that's what we have to work with here, and we're going to make it sound amazing. So yeah, we're just going to go through these effects, what I did, and I'll try to teach you some stuff. First of all, I want to mention that the most important thing about mixing is understanding EQ. Learning EQ is super, super important. I use it on almost every single instrument, actually probably every single instrument. If you don't know what EQ is, like a quick overview of what it is, this is how I began to understand it when it was explained like this. It's adjusting the volumes of frequencies of a sound. So with this synth here, if we load up an EQ, so you can see this sound is made up of all these frequencies going on right here. And so when we're using EQ, we're basically boosting or subtracting volumes of a certain frequency or a frequency range. So once you understand that, then you'll be able to hear sounds as frequencies, and then you'll know which ones, eventually if you practice, you'll know which ones are standing out too much and you need to cut, or which ones you need more of and you can boost. And that's how you essentially make a good mix. Also, compression is important too, but when you're making electronic music, you honestly don't need to compress that much because the sounds are pretty consistent the way they are, and you don't really need to keep them in check. But yeah, we're just going to get right into it, and I'll show you some of the techniques I use. Another thing before we get started with each individual instrument is that all of my instruments are being routed to this channel right here, and it's being sidechained. So without this, you don't hear anything. So basically, they're all individually like routed like this. Instead of to the master, they're routed here, and then this is routed to the master. And then I'm sidechaining everything simultaneously. That's just how I do it. For this, I used Fruity Peak Controller. I'm not going to show you how to do that in this video. You can look it up if you want to know. But yeah, that's how I'm doing the sidechain. So yeah, let's get into the mixing. So why don't we start off with like kick and bass. I have this kick drum that I made, and it doesn't need a whole lot done to it because I produced it pretty well. But I did throw some EQ on it. Just, oops, right there, like taking out a little bit of that frequency. And also these frequencies right here. I'll show you what I did for the sub bass. I made this patch with Massive, and it's just sub bass, like a sine wave with some saw in it. How I mixed it was I added isotope trash, just some tube saturation or tape saturation, and a little bit of roll off on a high end. And you don't need distortion like that, but I just tried it and it sounded cool. It made it louder, and I don't know. Then I have this EQ taking out some of these higher frequencies, so it's more focused on the low end and there's not too much high going on. But I have this compressor on here because my sub bass like has a transient to it, like it kind of stabs, and I wanted to bring that out by compressing it. So you hear it when I smash this threshold. So I just wanted a little bit of that, so it brings out the transient there. Another EQ, just taking out a tiny bit of the lows, just turning them down a tiny bit. So one thing about mixing you should know is that the only thing that should be taking up the low end of your mix is the kick and the sub. It shouldn't even be like your saw basses. Yeah, they're sounding really good together and really filling up that low end. And so I'll show you later that in every other instrument we're going to cut off all the low frequencies so that the kick and the sub are just taking up that whole thing. So we'll mess with the levels later, but for now we have them EQ'd well. They're sidechained, so you definitely want to sidechain your sub bass, because if you play it at the same time as the kick, it'll totally interfere. And you just want a really clean sound so the kick hits really nicely and then the sub comes in after it with the sidechain. So, alright, so let's do the snare real quick. It sounds pretty good the way it is. The samples sound pretty good the way they are. They're just 2 layers here, and then 2 claps. So with 1 layer, I just have a little bit of subtle EQ, a little bit adding on the top end there, and then taking a tiny bit away from that. And then this one, I have transient processor, taking away the transient because the other snare sample like has some good transients. By the way, the transients are like the very first part of the sound that you hear. And then EQ, taking out all the lows and then just having it like boosted in the high a little bit, so that when it's combined with this other snare, it just makes it sound fuller and brighter. Then just a sound goodizer and a soft clipper just to keep it from going above 0. And then the claps, I didn't put any effects on those because they sounded good. So mixed together and without it, it just sounds so much brighter. And okay, so then we have these crashes on top of the kick, and I just brightened them up with some EQ. Actually, I took away some of the frequencies. I high passed it, added a tiny bit of reverb, vitamin stereo, which is like kind of like a multiband compressor, but also an EQ, multiband EQ, I don't know. But I just like took these higher frequencies and boosted them. And then compressor, which isn't super necessary, but I just compressed it very lightly. And then some more subtle EQ. So without it and with it, it's just brighter and nicer sounding. Overall, like when you're mixing, if you add brightness to certain things that should be bright, like cymbals and hi-hats and stuff, it'll just make it sound more exciting. Then we have same kind of thing with the hi-hats, just adding, doing some subtractive EQ a tiny bit with some of those frequencies, and then doing some additive with vitamin, and then reverb, a little bit of stereo imager just to make it a little wider sounding. Yeah, so then these just sound a little more exciting than they did before. So all that kind of stuff is going to add up in your mix eventually. Then let's move on to the bass here. And I added flangus. It makes it sound more interesting, like flanged. And then trash 2, which adds so much. I just put like a really crazy distortion on there with the wetness just 50%. So that just sounds huge and it's so much nicer now. And then taking away some of the high frequencies, and that's a range that's kind of annoying. Then yeah, as you can see, once again, like even though this is a bass, I'm rolling off the low end so that there's not a whole lot going on. And then an OTT, just making it brighter and more smashed and nice. So without it, pretty lame. With it, exciting. And then same technique with this, with some distortion, some light distortion, and then just EQing. So yeah, I have, like, the bass is not the main concern for these sounds. I want to actually take away some of the bass because the sub bass is so strong and so clear that that's going to be your low end of the track. So everything that's not the sub bass, even if it's like synth basses, you want them kind of thin sounding so that the sub can take out, can like fill up that low end. It's kind of an illusion because it sounds really fat, but it's really just a sub and two other sounds. And I think in this mix I have them quieter. Then we have this bass stab thingy. Once again, taking out some of those lower frequencies. Just sweeping around. A lot of times I just sweep around for frequencies that kind of stand out too much and cut them a little bit just to make room. Because, like I said before, EQing is just taking down volumes of certain frequencies. And if you do that to enough instruments, you create more space and your whole mix seems wider and just more professional sounding. So then this cool lo-fi effect, more EQ, compression, and a little bit of reverb, which is kind of unnecessary. I don't really need the reverb there. Okay, so this one is going to change quite a bit. This is a Pluck Synth with Silent 1. So first some EQ. A lot of times when I do EQ, I'm like lowering this area, this like bass and low mid area, just because that stuff makes your whole mix muddy. Yeah, so just sweep around and find frequencies that aren't great and cut them a little bit. I do a lot more subtractive EQing than additive. More boost on the high end with Vitamin. I have this multiband compressor which isn't doing much. I don't know why I put it on there. And then OTT is what makes this really come to life. Just put it at 50%. By the way, OTT is free, so if you don't have it, go get it. It's really awesome. And then, yeah, just taking out some more frequencies with this EQ. Transient processor, adding a little bit of transients on the attack. And then doing way too much EQ here, but yeah, that's just how I did it. Stereo imager, and then one more EQ on here. So before it sounded like this, and now it sounds like this. It's such a huge difference, and it'll make a huge difference in the mix. Yeah, so let's move on to the synth. This is where it really needs work. So this synth is too loud and it's too low mid heavy. So taking out those low frequencies. Yeah, that's stuff you don't want. So it sounds really thin by itself, but since like the bass and the sub bass are taking up that low frequency range, it's gonna sound, the whole mix is gonna sound better. Just some subtle subtractive EQ. Vitamin, once again, adding some highs. And then, yeah, I took away some highs, so it wasn't really necessary. And the reason I did that is because there's a white noise that's taking up the high frequency range and really clearly. So I can take away some of the highs on this because I don't need it so that this one can shine through. Then we have stereo imager, filter. Yeah, so this is what it used to sound like. Then we have this white noise, which I just did some very, very subtle EQing, taking away some of those right there. Stereo imager, just making it a little wider sounding. And then another layer. This is another layer of synths I have. I'm going to do the same type of thing on it. The bass roll off here. And yeah, this one is nothing exciting in the high frequency range. Sound goodizer just makes it fatter and thicker. And then taking away some more of those low mid frequencies, some more of the highs. Together they sound cool, but not super bright. And then you add the white noise in, and now it sounds really great. And then I have this lead, which with the mixing doesn't sound a whole lot different. Just some really subtle saturation, distortion on there, and then taking away some of those high frequencies again, because the white noise takes care of that. So yeah, together that's all the instruments. And let's quick do the vocal chop. Yeah, with the effects it's so much brighter. I added some of these high mid frequencies, took away some of the really high stuff, added a stereo enhancer, compressor, Maximus, a tiny bit of more reverb, then the sidechain, and then I added some more effects right here. Transient. I didn't want the transients to be too overwhelming, so I turned them down a little bit. And then Vitamin Stereo added some of those high frequencies back in. So now we have all of the nice sounding effects added, and let's listen to it. Yeah, unfortunately the CPU is kind of bad, but it's sounding better. Now we just got to get the levels right. Let's add in one element at a time. I want a little bit more bass there. So yeah, these two basses, this one's mono, and this one has more stereo, and this one's just like crunchier and more high frequency range. So when you take it away and add it, just together they sound really nice. So we want to get those levels right. And the sub. Probably too loud. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's too loud. We want to bring that down a little. So with the synths, just kind of want to balance those out a little bit. Bring that mono bass up a tiny bit. Okay, so sub bass. Just make it really thick and low heavy. Kick might be a little loud. Yeah, this is what I have to deal with when I make my music. Alright, so here's what it sounded like before. And this is how it sounds now. I hope you guys enjoyed that video and learned something new about mixing. It was kind of just like an overview, but if you guys want to learn more about specific stuff, let me know in the comments and I will consider doing a video about that. Don't forget to check out my single Going to the Sun, which I used in this video, the actual real version on iTunes and Spotify or wherever else you listen to it. And I want to give a quick shout out to these two Instagram accounts. If you want a shout out in my next video, go to my Instagram at Asher Postman, give me a follow, comment on my latest post, and that's all you gotta do. Once again, if you're not subscribed yet, dude, subscribe. It's not that hard. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So Peace.